Welcome to our Catholic Champion Show. This is episode 2. It's John Yep and my friend Michael Hichborn. We got a hot show today, especially talking about the debate and the path forward for the remaining 51 days till the big day in November. You're not going to want to miss this. Hey everyone, welcome to our Catholic Champion Show, episode 2. Michael Hichborn, John Yep here, just to give you the rundown on the event that got a record 74 million views. The debate, the highest in 16 years, which I have to say right off the bat, okay, 74 million views in traditional media. That's a lot, and it is a lot. But I also was just thinking about how some of these past the X Live that Trump had with Elon, that was like 5 times the size of the debate, and it shows, before we even get into the debate, just how the shifting the media in general. Like 74 million is big for them, but at the same time, with all the different social media or third party media outlets, it's shifting dramatically, and that's also something that makes the left very, very scared. Because they're unable to control the narrative, right? Which is why we probably saw things like the Telegram. They've been pressing out, like Elon was banned from Brazil, the X, right? So lots going on. But first of all, Michael, initial thoughts. What do you think about the debate?
Well, it's interesting. I think that this debate actually set the tone for the big question, which is, are the debates actually influential in the election at all anymore anyway? In preparation for this, I actually went back and I watched some of the debates from the 1980s. You've got Reagan and Mondale. You've got Reagan and Carter. You've got Bush and Dukakis. And as I watched those debates, it was very obvious that what you had were real statesmen discussing real issues that were facing the country. And obviously Reagan just mopped the floor with his opponents both times. And Bush, he really kind of handed it to Dukakis too. Dukakis was not a very good debater. But the point is that you had gentlemen on the stage. They weren't attacking each other. They would put a little barb at each other, but it was mostly in gentlemanly behavior. But what we see now, especially in recent years, is a lot of vitriol back and forth. And unfortunately, I don't see a whole lot of substance in these debates, just a lot of talking points. And that's just in general. I'm not speaking about anything in particular with regard to these two candidates. I'm just saying in general, you hear a lot more buzzwords, a lot more just kind of an amorphous identity of their political platform without anything really specific. And so the question then becomes, are these debates really beneficial to anybody at all? So that was my first takeaway from the entire thing.
So you're correlating, if there's no substance to something, then it has no effect. It's in essence, which I'd almost like push back on, in the sense of yes, like first of all, we have to look at the historical fact that, according to polling, it's the most amount of people have, since recorded history, essentially, have already decided who they're going to vote for prior to Labor Day. Like, this is unprecedented levels that we have just in terms of polling. So most people have decided, at least compared to other years. Now, for that undecided, you look at, okay, yes, the debates, without a doubt, by and large, the last few cycles, the debates don't have what we traditionally define as substance, talking about ideas, proposals, hard numbers. It's jabs and emotions. But I would say the populace today, unfortunately, is not as educated as they used to be. Social media has done a number, and also just the downing down of education has also made society as a whole less reflective, less they react on the spur, they're emotions based. So taking it from that angle, you could almost argue that no, these really do have an effect. because there is no substance. It's almost like if there was substance, maybe that wouldn't have an effect. But the emotions, the thing, it does work. I mean, because the counters, like, I mean, these people, again, both parties, both sides, love them or hate them. Uh, they have access to the best polling information possible. They've done their research. They've done their studies. If they're going in with those emotional jabs, there must be a reason to their method to their madness. Wouldn't you agree in that sense, Michael?
Well, to a sense, and obviously both candidates were coached in that particular direction. And I think that when looking at the polling data after the debate, what we saw is that those who were already in support of Trump became even more supportive of him, and those who were supportive of Harris became even more supportive of Harris, and the undecideds. And there aren't many, as you pointed out, but the undecideds did lean more towards Trump after the debate. I mean, as I was watching, the very first thought that I had was, wow, this feels just like a football game. They said, well, Trump won the coin toss and he deferred to Harris. And I'm sitting there going, oh, so he's going to be kicking off to her and she's going to return the football. I mean, it was bread and circuses right from the beginning.
Which is American people love that. I mean, even a lot of people have watch parties and stuff like that. It's like almost feel like a Super Bowl to an extent. Americans love to compete. They love to just get out there and face your opponent dead on. They're very direct, right? So when another party says, I'm not going to debate, it's like, whoa, what is this, right? So it did feel like a circus, but such is American politics today. It's the maneuvering of it's fake in a lot of ways. It's fake on what you actually see happen on the front, but what's on the backside is where it all matters. So they were going after those undecided voters. You're right. You mentioned Trump apparently did better afterwards. Did you see that, Michael, that graph line where they showed the undecideds it went across and how they were changing their minds throughout the debate?
Right.
It was that was interesting to see because the undecideds mirrored the GOP, or they started going more towards Trump as time went on.
Well, and I think there's a reason for that. As I was watching the debate, if you turn, one of my favorite things to do in watching somebody speak or in watching, sometimes it's great to watch a movie without the volume on, just to see if you can learn something about the storyline based upon the facial expressions and the visual acting of the actors.
Right.
And if you watch the debate, Harris came off as shrill. She came off as incredulous. She came off as not just animated, because animated is not even the right word. I would actually say that she came off as overly aggressive. And Trump, he sat there and he smiled at a few things and he would shake his head a few times, but he was not interrupting. He did not go on the visual attack. He spoke matter of factly, and Harris, her facial expressions, just kind of
obviously planned. Obviously,
no.
I mean, they had her in front of a mirror. I'm sure they do this, right? They had her in front of a mirror to practice this. I want you to see what this looks like. So those were choreographed intentionally, correct?
Maybe. But I think actually what we got was more of her actual personality coming out, where she would, it's this kind of visual response that she would give. And we've seen it in interviews that she gives. And she even at one point held herself back from cackling the way she normally would. But the fact is, her visual presentation, I think, was more the authentic her, and it came across as unbelievable. It was put on. It was the same kind of thing you would see from somebody who was rightly accused of committing a crime, going, oh, I never did that.
Right.
It's that same kind of thing.
They went right into their first topic was economy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the order of topics is very important too as well. Obviously the moderators chose that, so we know they were biased. That goes without saying. There was basically 3 against 1. Trump knew that. Everyone knew that going in. They're going into ABC. It's hostile territory. So the order of topics was important because it also shows to a certain extent of where they want to press their opponent being Trump in this instance. They did go to the economy first, and I think they knew maybe that wasn't their first preferred topic, but they had to go there because polling wise, that's what most Americans care about. It's economy, it's immigration in terms of polling. However, before they went to immigration, they put a second topic in there, which is we'll talk about in a second. But first, economy. General thoughts about what they said about the economy, Michael.
So the discussion on the economy, the first question right off the bat was, are we better off now than we were 4 years ago? Harris completely ignored the question. And she went on by talking about how she was raised in a middle-class family. And she would talk about how her plan, which wasn't really a plan, it was just talking points, was to help the middle class. She wanted to give tax cuts for kids, the child tax cuts. And she wanted to give small business stimulus packages to help boost small businesses, to aid the middle class. She didn't talk about how that was going to happen. She didn't talk about what would be the rollout and the mechanism for making this happen. And then she just turned it all to an attack on Donald Trump by saying all he wants to do is make tax cuts for billionaires, which wasn't true. Trump responded by pointing out that just how terrible the economy was in its current state. He pointed out how much worse how much worse off we are now than we were 4 years ago. He talked about groceries. He talked about the housing market. He talked about the gas pumps. And Harris tried to turn that around and said, oh, no, that's because you left us with a mess. And again, Harris looked incredulous. She had pursed lips. She was writing furiously on pads of paper, just trying to, as if she was taking everything that he said seriously. She wasn't. But at the end of the day, what hit me the most, what struck me the most, was Marx's Trump's statement that she is a Marxist, that her father was a Marxist professor. Now, what struck me about that is that was the very last thing that Trump was allowed to say on that, and they immediately cut away from him. They did not want that issue to be pressed. And that right away told me, hey, to go back to our football analogy, the refs are going to throw that yellow flag wherever they can.
That's a great point. Watch where, because we know they're biased, the moderators. So watch where they cut off. Watch where they press, fact check, and watch where they cut off. I missed that, how fast they cut them off of the Marxist. If that was something that didn't resonate with the American people, they wouldn't have cared. They could have carried the conversation, right? They would have.
Well, what's interesting? I want to point this out. Harris looked like she wanted to respond to that, and the moderators cut her off. So they didn't even want her to address that, because why? They didn't want that topic to be discussed at all. Her father is a Marxist professor. She was raised as a Marxist. Everything that all her talking points throughout her entire political career have tracked with Marxists. In fact, Liz Cheney, 4 years ago, when Kamala was running the first time, Liz Cheney pointed out that she was left of Bernie Sanders. But now Liz Cheney, of course, is endorsing Kamala Harris.
I've had friendly debates with friends and back and forth about whether it's good to paint the other side as Marxists or communists. I mean, philosophically, they really are. But my friends are coming in from the point of, yes, but the general populace out there, like especially the younger generations, do they really understand what that means? So when we refer to them as that, it's like, do we want to name that? Do we want to say that? Or is there a better term to frame the left, or at least the current left in its state? And personally, I think Marxist is a great term, right? I love it for a couple of reasons. I think, Michael, you as well. Marxist is a great bridge word also between Catholics and non-Catholics, right? We, philosophically, again, the Catholic Church, we've been calling this out since 2 years before the Communist Manifesto in 1846. And of course, we have the connection with Fatima, right, where Our Lady warned about the spread of atheistic communism, right? So it's a great bridge word to talk into the secular world. But I do think communism also encompasses a lot of the stuff that we're seeing. It's replacing government as the ultimate authority. Would you agree that it's a good term?
I do. And I think that people understand, and the reason it's a good one, and Trump came back to it because he made a reference to Venezuela. He said if she gets in, she gets put into power, we're going to become worse than Venezuela, and he's right. He's absolutely right about that. So he did bring it back to a visual, or at least a philosophical representation, a real world representation of what happens when you have Marxists in power. You brought up Brazil. That's also a form of Marxism, because the current dictator there in Brazil is a communist. And what is he doing? He's controlling the media by shutting out free speech. And once again, if Kamala Harris gets put into power, that's what we can expect.
By the way, if you hear dogs in the middle, those are my dogs. Normally they're outside, but I'm keeping them close after hearing all the stories from Springfield, Ohio about people eating dogs and cats. We're keeping our pets close, but just saying. But by the way, that was, for whatever reason, how crazy the story it is. It does seem like there's legitimacy to it. Like that's actually happening. And it's not because they don't have enough food there in Springfield. It's just the migrants, the illegal immigrants are taking over that town, and that was the third issue was brought up, was illegal immigration. But that has really caught the media's attention as kind of a poignant example of this is what's happening. Trump's been talking about since 2016 about coming down the escalator, that immigration was going to just totally revamp the American landscape. You see a very concrete example of that. But so economy, it was good. They traded jabs back and forth. The poll out of CNN that was most interesting, it was, okay, who do you think prior to the debate was better, Trump or Kamala with the economy? It was like 57 to 37%. After the debate, it went up 2% in Trump's favor. So if anything, still after all this, just talking about the one issue of the economy, which is the number one thing Americans care about, Trump won statistically. That's from liberal CNN, right? So 1-0 essentially. Going on to what we Catholics care about, the preeminent issue. They went right for the chase. They went to abortion.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that whole back and forth? Because that is the number one thing that the libs are really pressing Trump on. That is, right or wrong, why Trump has come towards the middle on some of his positions on abortion, because he's trying to offset the attacks from the left. So what do you think there, Mike?
So when it comes to abortion in this particular debate, I don't want to talk about the outside platform issues and all that kind of things, because that's a whole separate issue. Mm-hmm. In this debate, Trump was asked about a nationwide abortion ban. And what he did, he said, look, I was asked to appoint pro-life judges to overturn Roe versus Wade because people on both the left and the right agree that Roe versus Wade is a bad decision. It was a bad precedent that was set across the country. He said, we wanted to overturn that to put the issue back to the states. Why? Because it's not the federal government that prosecutes murder charges. Criminal charges are supposed to be prosecuted on the state level. This is a very constitutional position. Now, whether Trump is fully pro-life or not is not what's at issue. What he's talking about is the federal and constitutional position with regard to where prosecution is supposed to take place. He said, we put it back to the states. So then he turned it right back around and said, so Kamala, you tell me, where do you ever draw a line on the limits to abortion? Will you draw it at the 9th month, the 8th month, the 7th month, the 6th month? And she refused to answer the question. Absolutely, patently refused to answer the question. She kept saying, oh, you just want to ban it all, and which was a lie. And what's more, she kept talking about Agenda 2025, which, again, the Trump campaign had nothing to do with. She perpetuated the lie that this is something that Trump had instituted and signed off on, and it was his agenda, and he was going to implement it. And she kept pushing this lie. She was never once fact-checked by the moderators about this. And again, Trump won that round handily. He kept it on the issue. He talked about, why it was a state issue, not a federal issue. And Kamala kept trying to put forth this false narrative that he was going to institute a national ban.
He went on the offense and went right to the extreme abortion, similar to what he did with Hillary Clinton in 2016, talking about abortion. He just went to that clip that's everyone's watched a million zillion times about what late-term abortion is. And in fact, what was Kamala pushed back, or the moderators fact check Trump on if you really can in a few different states have late term abortion. Does it really happen still in the United States of America? Can you do it that late in the game? Answer is yes. And I want to just to underscore my point. We saw this. I know it's not time for the X post of the week, but this is such a great video that Kristen, our mutual friend Kristen Hawkins from Students for Life, did right after this debate, just to kind of reinforce that this does happen in America. It's a 1-minute video. Charles, can you play it real fast?
I just turned 32 weeks pregnant. Am I able to come in for an abortion ASAP?
I wouldn't be able to see you for the week of the 23rd, so that would put you at 34 weeks.
Can I still have an abortion at 34 weeks?
Yes, ma'am. I just have to do an intake form. Do you have about 5 minutes?
Sure, I have 5 minutes. Yeah, I just found out that she could have Down syndrome. I can still have the abortion, right, even though she has Down syndrome?
Yeah, so we just have to do an intake because the doctor...
It doesn't matter.
That's late-term abortion, ma'am. That's abortion in the 8th month of pregnancy. That's discriminatory based on someone's genetic code. She just confirmed she would commit an abortion on me with my child who's viable and can live outside the womb.
That is such a powerful clip. I mean, just hats off to Kristen. I mean, that's just the truth is out there. And, you know, that's what's so frustrating about these debates is the power of the word has lost so much effectiveness now in today's society because there's so much lies. Father lies, ultimately is the devil, right? That's what Christ himself said. And when they speak, you can't really trust them. And sometimes you have to just counter with just direct video evidence. That clip is unbelievably powerful. Would you agree, Mike? How about that for Kristen doing that?
Completely. In fact, what it does is it exposes the lie that Kamala Harris and in fact the moderators as well were perpetuating by saying that kind of abortion doesn't take place. Those abortions right before birth don't take place. That's a lie. And Kristen Hawkins just proved it. One other thing I want to point out is that Trump brought up the fact that the fact that the Democrats refused to talk about where they would draw the line on limits. He even brought up my own former state governor, Northam, who was on the record saying that, well, what we would allow is for the baby to be, you know, if the abortion failed, we would just set the baby aside and then let the doctors and the mother kind of determine what to do with the baby. And to add to that, he would simply allow the baby to die by exposure. That's murder. That's murder. That's killing the baby post-abortion. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz signed legislation that allows exactly that. And Kamala Harris.
5 babies have died. 5 babies have died under Tim Walz under that law. Yep.
That's right.
Going.
So the fact that he signed that into law and Kamala Harris saying that never happens. That's a lie. She was not fact checked. In fact, the moderators turned to Trump and said that doesn't happen. So again, it's that pass interference penalty that you know, nobody was touched. He clearly caught the ball cleanly, but they called a pass interference foul and got involved. Changed the game.
Given the gravity of that, I mean, that's more than pass interference call. That's like ejection, suspension from the league when you're talking about hiding the fact that you're killing babies who are like 5 days or, you know, hours old after they've left. It's insane. I do think also the two stances on abortion that we saw coming from both candidates, whatever there was Tuesday night, it kind of encapsulates the overall situation of the two-party system that we have here in the United States. One is completely gone, lost. Their whole direction is turned away from truth, goodness, and beauty. They're actively, aggressively chasing after the culture of death, for lack of a better word. And they're clear about it. God's not mentioned in their party platform. They invite the ape of the church, you know, quoting Fulton Sheen, to come up there and do the prayer, the DNC, where no mention of Jesus Christ is even mentioned. It looks like the church, but it's not the church, where there's no cross, there's nothing. So you have that's one side. And then the other side is we say it all the time. It's obvious. They're not as strong or as natural law would beg of them to be on the life issues.
Mhm.
They may be doing it for different strategic reasons. Again, that's a whole debate whether that's the right way to go or not.
Right.
But it's almost Jesse Romero, our friend, always says it like, one side is terminally ill, and the other side's it's like stage 1 cancer. It needs help. It needs urgent help. It needs
Right.
groups like Catholics for Catholics and other groups to hold up, to be that moral support, to keep the North Star very much clear in front of them. Is that a fair way to analyze the two parties we have right now?
Oh, you bet. Obviously, the left it just keeps moving left, and the problem with having this two-party system is that you always have one anchor side. They drop an anchor and they pull the other side closer to them. Then they move the rope a little bit. They drop another anchor and they pull the other side closer to them. And I'll get some kickback on this, but
True.
I'll go ahead and say it. If you put some of Donald Trump's policies up against what Bill Clinton was running on, not who he really was, but what he was running on in the 90s, there really isn't much difference. Except in terms that Trump, he actually would put limits on abortion, and he really does believe that abortion should not be allowed beyond a certain stage, whereas Bill Clinton was kind of all in for it, except he had the right talking points to the people at that time. But what he did, he pulled people a little bit more to the left, which allowed for this whole discussion to be center left as opposed to with a center and a right and a left. We don't really have that anymore.
I thought that's a very fair to say that. So you have essentially one party that's the anchor party that pulls the other towards the issue, and kind of vice versa. There's a little bit of an interplay there. And I think that happens when you have a populace which doesn't have the ultimate anchor in morality, right?
Right.
Morality keeps them grounded. There's that third. It's the third wheel, right?
Mhm.
That keeps them focused. As Washington, as the founders knew, that morality would sustain it. Otherwise, it becomes it's the masses, right? Masses controlling each other based on whatever whim or they have, and that's
It's
what
the
we're seeing.
political law of entropy.
100%. And for all the knocking people might say, well, Trump's got to come back on this issue with abortion. You got to have to understand the guy to a bit, because he's
Yep.
working with a populace
Mhm.
that has been given to him, right? We sometimes want, and I think he should be strong, and we want him to be strong on all these life issues because all these babies that are lost, right, et cetera, or other things. But we're asking him to do things that sometimes we don't even challenge our own prelates
Right.
to be like fine. Everyone is criticizing our different Republican leaders for being okay, fair. I hope you are also going on your X accounts. I hope you're also doing articles in Politico as well about some of our church leaders who are not speaking up, because it's not Trump's responsibility. It's not to deform the populace. It's our clergy. And when you look at the 10 states that have the abortion amendment on the ticket in this November, we're doing a project now, Catholics for Catholics. We're about ready to launch at the end of next week to really boost momentum there. I would hope that there are all the 10 states, 10 bishops' conferences in those states, that they are working like mad overtime to be vocal and to speak up about it, right? Thankfully, we had the Arizona Catholic Bishops' Conference speak up about it last week. They did an excellent video. That was after we did a joint initiative with Arizona Right to Life. We asked that we sent very respectful letters, got the people to send almost nearing 1,000 at this point to send a letter asking them to speak up, which they did. And now we, it's a treat to see, Michael, because I'm getting off on a tangent, but because the bishops speak up, it also allows the pastors to speak up as well. I was at a church this morning for Mass, and in the petitions, there was a petition that we would vote no on Prop 139. It was amazing to hear that, right? So circling back, abortion is a major issue right now. Now,
Yep.
Do you know this offhand, Michael? Statistically polling, is it the number 2 issue? Where does it rank in terms of what Americans are concerned about. And
Well, the number one issue is the economy. The number two issue is immigration. In terms of polling data, abortion isn't really so much a concern except for Kamala Harris's support base. And it's only a concern because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And so she's appealing to the NARAL pro Planned Parenthood crowd and trying to pander to them because there's more money in it than anything else. That's where a lot of her donation funds are going to come from. But when it comes to the issues that every average, your Joe in the supermarket American is going to care about, it's how much are my groceries going to cost? How much is it going to cost for me to fill up the gas tank? How much is my rent going to be next month? Those are the things that most Americans are really concerned about. And then on top of that, is my apartment complex going to be overrun by a bunch of Colombian drug gangs? And am I going to have a bunch of Haitians running around my neighborhoods and cutting off the heads of the geese in the neighborhood? Those are the things that Americans are concerned about.
It is. That was the third thing that they brought up: immigration. It is destroying this country. We don't even see the full effects of it yet. Inflation is in part related to that. Yes, it's government spending, but with all the influx of people that we can't pay for, we can't take care of.
We don't have the infrastructure for it.
We don't. And there's also, Pope Benedict talked about this too as well, that in terms of immigration, countries have a right to maintain their own cultural identity. And if they're just overrun with a different culture or cultures that just completely decimate what's there, that country has a right to refuse entry to those people when it reaches a certain limit. We're starting to see that with 10 to 15, 20 million people who've come in this country illegally. It's taken towns like Springfield, Ohio, which has a population of 50,000 people, and then 20,000 people are added to it who don't know the culture, don't know the language, haven't been able to assimilate in a quick way. It's not right. It's not just. It's not part of a just ordered society to allow that. And again, those 20,000 Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, could be the most amazing people in the world. Though, from what we've seen, migrant crime is a real thing as well. That a lot of these people are no bueno, right? I mean, most people are good. They're not evil people, but there's a lot of bad apples in the bunch, right? And like you referenced, right? Go ahead.
I wouldn't just focus on the bad apples or the good apples, or the essential problem that we are facing with having so many people come into this country is that you don't have a homogenous society anymore. You're taking people, and they're like fish out of water. Okay. They're in a situation, they're in a scenario that is not familiar to them. They don't have that encultured sense. This is why we have an immigration process to begin with, where people are educated about the history of this country, the laws of this country, the Constitution, what it means to be a citizen. The citizenship process in this country exists so that people can be integrated and being made true Americans. But now what we have with a sudden influx of 20,000 Haitians, you no longer have that homogeny, and you have a ghettoization that's taking place that, the people in Springfield, Ohio, that community was built. Those people have lived there for generations. It was built by their great grandparents, and their grandparents helped to build it up, and their parents helped to build it up. But now these Haitians are going in, they're trashing the neighborhoods because they're treating it the way they've treated everything back home. And that's not the way you integrate anybody into any society. And that's really the essence of this problem.
Give someone, in this case, examples are not perfect, but when you give a kid a toy and you just keep giving them toys and they've never learned to appreciate, or a teenager a car and they just keep giving it, they don't take care of it as much. It's a basic principle. My brother-in-law, my wife's family, they immigrated from Ireland. They fled the Troubles during the 1970s, right? When there was those religious wars, and they came over. And when my brother-in-law finally got his citizenship after doing all the paperwork, waiting the time, he wrote the most amazing letter. I should share it sometime. When he was in that room with 300 people was in California, and they raised their hand and they did the Pledge of Allegiance, and they swore they were going to be. He cried. He literally cried, and it was a powerful moment. He appreciated it. He was waiting for that, and I think that's what we have to, because to be part of this country is to be something great. It's an honor. It's something. It's a responsibility too. So that's not happening, and it's a serious issue. And we know, we're already seeing it. That's why when Trump talks about on Truth Social that the cheating is already beginning, what he means for this election is that they are using them already to vote. They're not citizens yet.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
So it's not right. It's not just. Again, I believe that the clergy could potentially be speaking up about that. That's not right. I mean, election integrity is actually a very valid thing to talk about. It was, after all, the USCCB. Do you remember this, Michael? I think I was talking about this. It's like 4 years ago. The USCCB, this is the headline, releases scathing letter calling government officials to election integrity.
Right.
Here's the catcher. It was in 2020. It was like October of 2020. And you're like, oh my gosh, wait, are you serious? Were they like saying that everything Trump was saying about election integrity was right? No, here's the clincher. They released it. They sent it to, I think it was the country of what? I think it was Uganda. And they were saying, because there was election scandal there, and they addressed the government, or it was the State Department. They asked the State Department to look into the elections of Uganda because there was so much rampant corruption.
Right.
So crazy. Okay, so that you can find that letter. It's probably on our website or on the USCC website at the very least. You can use that letter as proof that election integrity issues are something valid that we can be hearing from our clergy, right? So it's an important part of a democracy, which is a valid form of government.
Safest election ever, right? No, what we're facing right now, I mean, we have to ask the question, why is it that the Democrats consistently stand against having any kind of voter ID when going to the polls? Why is it that the Democrats stand against forcing anybody who goes to vote to have a valid driver's license or a valid state citizenship card? Why is it that the Democrats are actually positioning themselves to say that we stand against laws that would bar immigrants, people who are not citizens, from voting? They stand against those things. They stand against the integrity of the election system consistently. And the question is why? Well, you only stand against those things if you have something to gain from it. And what they have to gain is a voting class that has no right voting in our elections.
Absolutely. We know it's obvious. They're using them just to beef up their voting numbers. Okay. It's going to happen. Now, don't just sit there and get pissed off with it. What are you going to do about it? Okay. What we can do is we can tap into the number of people, American citizens, who are not registered to vote. Okay. You've got to get your neighbors to vote. You've got to get your friends. You would be so surprised at the amount of people that aren't registered to vote. They've never done it. Or maybe they are registered, but they're not planning to vote. Right. You can do that very, very easily. The link is in the description here on this video. Just text it to a friend. Takes you to whatever state you're in. You register right there, and you can get to the early voting list. If you're in places like Arizona, the ballot will be mailed to you. Send it to people. Make sure that they vote. Or even if they are registered to vote, they can send it to other friends who maybe not. Okay, we've got to do this. This is our best thing that we can possibly do at this point to stop what could happen. There could be some cheating. Most likely there will be. Who knows? But we have to do our part, and that's what you can do right now. We have time really for like one more issue, talking about the debate. And Michael, you made some great points in the email you sent to me, talking about how much they went after Trump for the J6 thing. So tell us about some of the lies that were said there.
Yeah, so one of the things that they kept talking about was how the first question was, well, Mr. Trump, do you regret having said what you said during the January 6th thing? And I think that Megyn Kelly pointed it out on her after debate discussion, and she used some rather colorful language. But basically what she said was, that's like saying, Mr. Trump, do you think that the garbage things that you said were garbage? And then turning to Kamala Harris, don't you think Donald Trump is garbage? I mean, that's basically the logical setup for that particular part of the discussion. It was a setup. It was a soft lob of the volleyball so that she could spike it, and that's all that it was. I think that it devolved into a lot of emotionalism. Harris was allowed to repeat a lot of the old false claims that were made against Donald Trump.
Again, they want emotionalism though too. They want
Yes.
that because the populace right now, at least the undecided portion of it, is emotional.
Right. And they weren't going to allow Trump to make corrections to those falsehoods. They had his microphone muted, but he continued to talk. So they wound up having to turn on his mic. But he pointed out, hey, look, that bloodbath statement had nothing to do with the outcome of the election, had everything to do with energy concerns. And if you watch the full quote, that's absolutely true. But the moderators were consistently fact-checking Trump on these particular issues, and they never once fact-checked Kamala Harris.
There was a lot of emotional jabs. They recycle. I mean, the ones that have been debunked a million times. Charlottesville, J6.
Yep.
I thought, one of your points about J6 was when talking about that. She was Kamala was at the at the Capitol that day. She was actually at the DNC headquarters, right?
Right. Yes.
Which,
but she was only there in the morning. She was only at the Capitol in the morning, and she left to go to the DNC headquarters.
Which I got to pause there, and this is one thing that people need to hear this. The full story is with Darren Beatty at Revolver News. Darren Beatty has made the case that one of the smoking guns of J6 is the fact that she was at the DNC on that morning, okay? We condemn all violence, obviously, especially shooting of unarmed white women like happened at the Capitol. The only person that died that day was a civilian, okay? As Trump said himself. But she was at the DNC the day. Now, what was found at the DNC? The pipe bomb.
Oh, yeah.
So, in what has been since shown on video about that pipe bomb, that when they first discovered, there's a time lapse when the police or Secret Service whatever discovered the pipe bomb was actually there, and they hadn't done the dismantling of it yet. They knew it was there. They allowed a group of school children to walk by that pipe bomb. If they knew that it was a bomb that had to be defused, why did all the security officers on that video, you can see this for yourself from Revolver News, not even worry that those kids were going nearby?
Right.
The second clue is that if the vice or, Kamala Harris was at the DNC where there was a bomb planted right outside, why are they not talking about that fact that she was probably one of the members who was closest to getting killed that day? They don't even bring that up.
Right.
It's an interesting point. So
it's a very interesting
that
point.
bomb is very interesting. Like, there's more to that story than we're being told.
I wonder if they hired the same Secret Service that was on Trump's detail when they tried shooting him.
Well, potentially, I mean, again, most of the was from the Department of Homeland Security, which is Merrick Garland too. They're under the same office, same branch, right? So there's a lot of corruption there, which needs to be brought to the light. The light's a good thing, and we want that. Speaking of light, let's end on a good topic. So we always close off each show, Catholic Champion, with our X post or social media post of the week. Michael finds one, I find one. Doesn't tell me, I don't tell him. Michael, who's going first? You want to talk about mine or yours?
Why don't we go with yours?
All right. I hope you saw this, everyone. We did our part to make sure that it was seen by the world. In fact, last count, 55 million people had seen this post. So it could have been statistically probably the highest tweet of the week. President Trump, there you have it. September 8th. It's Mary's birthday. I'm going to guess you probably chose this one too. But September 8th is the day where Christians, Catholics specifically, have venerated for hundreds of years as being the birthday of the Blessed Mother, okay? And we woke up on Sunday morning and found that on Truth Social and later on X as well, President Trump tweeted that happy birthday, Mary. Okay. That blew us up. So we obviously capitalized that and it sent shockwaves. Thoughts on that when you saw it for the first time?
I was amazed. Somebody sent it to me Sunday morning just before I went into mass. I had just gotten out of the truck or out of our van and my phone buzzed and I looked down and there it was. And it was an incredible moment because what it said was that, I mean, Trump's not Catholic. And how many Protestants do you know that are going to say happy birthday to Mary on the Catholic feast of Our Lady's birthday? Zero. I don't know of
Devil's
any.
advocate. Okay, we know they're going to say it was he was just trying to get voters. There was like totally no devotion there. What would you say to that?
My turnaround to that is the Catholic vote in the conservative Catholics who are already going to be supporting him or already supporting him. If there's any pandering to be done, I mean, I can't think of any conservative Catholic who really does care and love Our Lady is considering voting for Kamala Harris. I can't think of
however, this is why it's crucial. There are a large number of Catholics right now, I would guess it's large, that are not going to vote at all, are going to vote third party.
Maybe.
You and I are seeing it. I mean, maybe it's not large. I hope I'm wrong.
I think it's a small number.
I hope
I
so.
think there's a small number that are stepping out. And the reason I say that is that Donald Trump.
I mean, we did have some of the, and just for respect, I won't mention their names. They do a lot of amazing work. Some of the biggest leaders in our culture movement have done articles with major secular outlets saying that they will not vote at all in this election.
Maybe that's true, but I don't know that they represent a large number of people, specifically a large number of Catholics. And the reason I say that is because the current situation, I think that any thinking Catholic right now recognizes that Kamala Harris poses the greatest threat to the integrity of the United States that we have ever faced. Barack Obama was a Marxist. He is a Marxist. Kamala Harris is a Marxist with deep pocket ties to China, with deep pocket ties to other international Marxist entities that would love
Walter, vice president as well.
That's correct. That would love for nothing else than to see the United States devolve into a mess of chaos. And she is an agent of chaos. No, I think that faithful Catholics recognize what this election really is about, that keeping Kamala Harris from gaining full control of the federal government is absolutely essential to maintaining the economic, the hegemonic strength and viability of this country. And, that was one of the talking points that Trump repeated over and over during the debate was, hey, look, if Kamala Harris is elected, we will devolve into World War III. And that's a fact. That's already starting to happen. The stage is set in Europe and the Middle East for that to happen. Economic chaos, her economic policies, she doesn't have a policy, and he's right about that. Her policy is to spend as much money as possible, print more cash, destroy the dollar because it's in the better interest of international communism for that to happen. So absolutely.
And a part, even if the president was just pandering to voters, which I don't think that he was.
I don't think he was.
That's interesting to hear you said as well. There is something to the Latin phrase, right? Ex opere operantes. That, in other words, there are certain actions that are taken. The easiest example is like the Holy Mass. You could have Theodore McCarrick celebrate a Mass, and with everything that he was doing, the evil that he was doing with, abusing children and kids, et cetera, that was still the Eucharist, right? It wasn't dependent on ex opere operato, the action of the minister. It was the action which brings grace to it. In a similar way, it's like when you put a picture of the sacred there, that has an effect all of itself.
Actual grace.
Right. I mean, if you don't think that's true, the reverse is like you put a picture of a demon. Or you play with the Ouija board, like you may have the most pure intention, but the action itself brings with it certain goods and evils.
Yep.
And I think that alone, the fact that it's been seen over now 55 million times, 55 million people have seen the image that completely changed the entire continent of North America, as well as a reminder that is the pro-life image. Mary is pregnant in that image.
That's
The
right.
last thing I'll say, and I want to hear your X post of the week, Michael. We are giving today one of our volunteers is going to be with President Trump and offer to take something to the president for us. We printed up a little card for him, and it has a picture of his social media post. And in it, it's just thanking him for everything that he's doing for life already, and to encourage him to continue to protect life at all stages, because Catholics want to have us back, and we understand the evil of the other side, and we also know that this is a spiritual warfare. So say a prayer that goes well today. They'll be meeting pretty soon with the president. But Michael, what do you got for me?
As far as the next post, I'll be honest, I didn't actually have one for you. I was thinking that we were going to exchange back and forth every week. I didn't know we were both going to do it at the same time.
It's all good. You could have lied and just made up a post, so I appreciate the honesty, though.
But I will say this: when I reposted the Trump post, no, you can't say tweet anymore. It's not Twitter technically, but when he put that image of Our Lady up, I reposted it and I said that Our Lady will never forget anyone who honors her. And I would add to that our Lord will never forget anyone who honors his mother. So there, to your point about real and actual graces flowing from that one act, I fully believe that is exactly what our Lord and Our Lady, it pleases them that this happened. Regardless of whether you think that he had a particular intention one way or another, the fact of the matter is he said happy birthday to Our Lady on her birthday. And that alone is a meritorious act, period.
She's in this. Our Blessed Mother's here. This is the feast day of the holy name of Mary. A great way to end, just to kind of frame this whole up, that the mediators of all grace is someone we need to go to. And we're doing that from our part here at Catholics for Catholics. We have launched our first week, was last Sunday. Every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, we do a live stream of the Patriotic Rosary. Jesse and Anita Romero sit with a different priest every single week, and they lead us in the Holy Rosary. So if you also know your priest, or if your priest listening to this, we're looking for a few more priests that will be willing to take a Sunday and pray with us. It's live stream across the country. First one was a huge success. You can tune in right now on YouTube channel or website or Rumble, because we have to pray the Rosary. This has worked. Michael, you're the absolute historian with Mary and stuff. So you already know this, but it was the people of Vienna that were instructed by the Capuchin monk, who was a chaplain. He told everybody, told the soldiers and the people of Vienna, if you want to beat, in this case, the Moorish invaders, you need to pray the Rosary. They did, and they won in 1683, 341 years ago today, and that's why we have this feast day of the name of Mary. So, you want to lead us in a Hail Mary, Michael, to end the show?
Absolutely. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. That is Catholic Champion, episode 2. We will see you next Wednesday, same time. Thanks. God bless. And let's get to work.